delighted to introduce Nathan as our first guest speaker. So Nathan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Good morning, everybody. One of the nice things about working for a startup is you get to make up your own job title. I was really scratching my head a few years ago, and I thought, wow, that sounds great. I'll call myself a Chief Strategy Officer. And here I am. So, we've gone from three people sitting around a table back in 2015 to staff of around about just over 100 people now. So we're not really a startup anymore. But the reason that's happened is because of the growth in interest in social value over those 8 years. So I'm just going to talk a bit about social value to start with as a thing. One of the things I was saying earlier on was actually we don't have to spend so much time nowadays saying what is social value. But actually I'm going to do that anyway. But it's a different level of question. I think pretty sure everybody in the room has come across the concept and the idea, and it's really about what does it really mean? You know, how do you genuinely deliver social value? What does it mean to business? How is it evolving as well over time? Sorry, I'm just going to put this down so I can keep an eye on the time, because I do tend to kind of rattle on a bit if allowed. So I'm going to try and keep this to about 15 minutes so all of the other speakers can get a shot as well, because I think we want to hear from all four of us, and then we're going to try and allow about half an hour for questions. So I'd love to get your questions at the end, because this is going to do no more than kind of skate over the surface of it. So anyway, let's jump in. So I'll talk about what I think, so how to think about social value and what our take on that is, and why it's important for business in a general sense. Just to kind of set the context, I'll say a bit more about Social Value Portal as a business and what we do, but not too much. I'm going to talk about the journey that social value has been on over the last 8 years, and I think that's important. I think it's also important to look forward and think about where it's going. I guess my key message there for businesses is it's coming. Doesn't matter what you call it in a way, but it's coming. And I'll talk about why I think that's the case. So might as well get on the bus and help to shape it, I think would be my key message. So, Adrian, I think, summarised this really well, actually. Business is a force for good. Mark Carney makes the point that businesses have a vested interest in the economic, social and environmental systems in which they operate, and really what this is about is a better understanding of the connectivity between these different issues, economic, social and environmental. And the way we look at social value is in that kind of holistic sense, the way it all ties together. One of the things we'll maybe pick up on later on, because Simon will kind of focus in on this, is the way the new, if you like, newish net zero agenda interrelates with the social agenda. So how do you decarbonise in a way that is socially positive? I imagine Lloyd and, sorry I forgot your name, Sarah, we've both got views on this as well, so it'd be good to kind of talk about that a bit more. So social value as a concept, as I say, is very much, in our minds, a holistic thing. It's everything that affects the well-being of people, whether that's at a local level or a micro level, or a regional level, or at a national level. But what we're starting to find, which is why it's great to be here today, is that if you start to think strategically about social value in and around a place or a region, then you start to kind of leverage the positive activities that businesses are doing. You start to build those relationships, and that creates more social value. It's the way that comes together to maximise the delivery, and it focuses, because you can do what's called social value, but actually does it make a difference in reality? and we can all organise our staff to do X number of hours of volunteering. But what benefit is that volunteering creating? Where is that really making a difference? And actually, if you understand that there are some organisations in your local area that really need those volunteers, they actually need volunteers who can do finance or programme management, or they can help with marketing, then you can see how that really starts to scale up the effect, the social benefit of what's happening. So connecting it all up is really, really important. So Social Value Portal. So we started life as an answer to the question posed by the Social Value Act, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment. But really, that was saying there's a piece of legislation here that is one of the shortest pieces of legislation on record. It's only a few pages long. It says virtually nothing. It basically just says public sector bodies need to think about social value when they're procuring, period. And that's kind of it. So, you know, a council could go, well, we thought about it and we don't think it's a good idea. I mean, that would be compliant with the law. But what we found was that there were some early adopters in the local authority sector in particular, some councils who saw it as an opportunity to bridge some of the gaps that were opening up in their service provision as a result of austerity, cuts in budgets, changes in the way funding was allocated. So this looked like a really great opportunity that they didn't want to miss. And really what we did was building on that by saying public sector bodies have huge purchasing power. Why don't they buy for social value? Why, you know, if they're letting a £300 million contract, they're entitled to say, what else are you doing for that contract? And that's really where it all started. And our approach was very much to create a standard methodology, so a single way of doing it, so that we had comparisons, people could talk about progress. At the end, our kind of ultimate goal, if you like, is we want to measure the social value of UK PLC. Well, we can only do that if we have a standardised set of metrics that everybody adopts and everybody uses. But also, we need to capture the data. We need to use the digital capabilities that we have to take in what's being done in terms of social value delivery, analyse it, report it, allow people to make those comparisons. We can't do it all on spreadsheets. So Social Value Portal is essentially a combination of those two things. It's a methodology and a digital platform that allows you to scale up on social value. So, how did social value become part of the landscape? I've talked a bit about the Social Value Act already, so that triggered a whole lot of stuff, and what we found actually quite quickly was that there were early adopters in the private sector as well. So one of our earliest clients was Legal & General, who do no public procurement. They're not interested in that side of things, but they have some very important relationships with planners and with other people within the public sector, so it mattered to them that they were doing the right thing, and actually it mattered to them at a corporate level as well. So what we found was there were drivers, transactional drivers, and there were champions, and the combination of those two things really started to build that momentum. Social Value Portal was founded in 2014, so that was a kind of immediate response to that. Then we created something called the National Social Value Task Force, which is a group of organisations across the public sector, the private sector and the third sector who are interested in this space, who continue to monitor and advise and oversee the TOMS that Adrian referred to, which is the measurement framework, which is open source and available to anyone to use. So there's a kind of independent body that sits over all of that. So it's kind of interesting to see then where this is all going. So UN Sustainable Development Goals, which many of you will be familiar with, is effectively a social value framework for the planet. So great. So we've got the TOMS, we link them up to the Sustainable Development Goals, then we can start to talk about social value in a much broader context. The UK government realised that its central government bodies were behind the curve on social value, so they brought their own approach in. That happened back in 2020. And then last year, the NHS, fairly slow adopter of social value, as we were just discussing just now, has finally come to the party, and 1 year on, they're starting to review the implementation of social value in the NHS. And then we've got the new Procurement Act that's coming either this year or next year that will reshape the way in which local authorities and other procuring authorities can procure stuff. And actually, I'm not too sure how that's going to affect social value, but it will. But it depends very much on the kind of implementation. And the other thing in the small text that I can almost hardly read on the screen here is that the European Union is bringing in a sustainability directive that will eventually directly affect every business that has a turnover of over 40 million euros, which is not that big. But actually, there are elements of that are very much about the supply chain. So whether or not you're directly caught by that, you will find if you do business, if you're a smaller business and you do business with larger businesses, that it will start to cascade down through the supply chain as well. So the momentum is building, which is why I said at the beginning, it's really a case of getting on the bus and starting to shape what social value should be for business and how business can best respond to the challenge. There's a chart here. I won't spend too much time, and I think we'll share the slides afterwards, won't we? But this is just our data on the public procurement side, so you can see the growth in projects that we've managed directly, and there's a lot of other stuff going on outside of Social Value Portal, obviously. You could just see that sort of exponential growth in the adoption of social value in public procurement in the UK. So there's a few things on this slide that are really about how social value really matters for business, and some data. And we hear a lot about motivation of young employees, and there are all sorts of other reasons why, if we define social value in the right way, it aligns with those other drivers that businesses need to take account of anyway as they position themselves for the future. And social value, if you start to look at it in that way, affects all parts of your business. It's about marketing, it's about how you procure stuff, as well as about how you bid for projects. It's about your human resources, about your people, and then it feeds through into finance. And ultimately, this should start to sit alongside your core finance functions so that you're accounting for social value. So that's great, but what does it look like on the ground in practice? Well, so that might all seem a bit kind of daunting and a bit high level, but the reality is that businesses are delivering social value in all sorts of ways already. And some of this is about how you present it, how you define it, maybe how you orientate it in a slightly different way. So, here are some of the things that you could be doing: training and apprenticeships, local buying, volunteering, employing local people, reducing carbon emissions and doing other things that are beneficial to the environment. All this kind of stuff you should see as part of your social value delivery. Little table there on the TOMs. Again, I won't dwell on this, but what we're trying to do is kind of systematize all of that so that you've got a standard metric every time for a particular kind of social value intervention. And we put a value on it, so you can start to talk about social value alongside your financial value. So, what does that all mean? This is what my attempt of kind of trying to kind of summarize the challenge, if you like, for businesses. It's about how you do good, positive things in a way that works for you sustainably, really important, but also for your communities and for the public sector, who are the kind of governance mechanism for social value, if you like. They're there to kind of understand, try and understand what works well for communities at a sort of strategic overarching level. So if you can do that, then you're well on the way. I'll just finish briefly by touching on some of the supporting tools that we've developed as Social Value Portal, because we realise that this is a big challenging space for businesses, and our focus, having kind of got the thing moving, built the momentum, is I think we're moving now into a different phase. What we need to be doing is supporting organisations who are increasingly number of organisations who are kind of coming in at the entry level, if you like, who are just getting started on social value. And at the same time, we've got companies and public sector bodies who are maturing in their social value delivery because they've been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years. So the space is kind of stretching, and all of these organisations need to be properly supported. So some of the things that we're doing at the moment, really sort of targeting on making it as simple and intuitive as we possibly can. So we've got a Social Value 101 booklet, which is the basics, absolute basics of social value, so kind of how you kind of conceptualise it to start with. We've got various additional tools, so we have a greenhouse gas calculator, for example, that allows you to set a baseline for your carbon emissions. Simple spreadsheet, but that baseline is a gap for many organisations. And we talked about the mapping to the SDGs earlier on. So this is progressively a bank of stuff that you can use to support your social value delivery. And then one of the things that I'm really focusing on at the moment is rolling out something we're calling the Social Value Academy, which provides e-learning training on social value. We have a foundation level at the moment that is fully functional. We're now starting to build the additional specialist modules on top of that. And we will kind of come to Simon at some point when we get to that sort of level that Simon's pitching at, but he'll talk a bit more about it later on. So that's all from me just now. I hope I haven't been for too long. But Adrian, who's next?
Me. Thank you very much indeed, Nathan. Hopefully that's given everybody an idea as to how the world is going to work in the future and how we can create systems like the Social Value Portal to actually tell our clients how we are delivering social value.